Welcome to First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. I'm your host, James Gardner, certified athletic therapist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, yoga instructor, human being. This platform, for the pros, by the pros, anybody in the performance space, and beyond. Welcome here to share in the stories of professionals, experiences, journeys, learning along the way. It's a platform to connect, to network, and to be a part of a community that cares, with conversations that matter, experiences that resonate, and generate ideas, thought-provoking, organic dialogue, passionate prose. Brought to you as always by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, and Benchmark Athletics, in association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. It's First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being a part of it. There it is. She speaks, we speak. Here we go. Session 96. First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast, getting closer and closer to that 100 mark. Rather elusive. Didn't know it would get there, but an amazing guest this evening. Our guest is Frances Flint, the one and only. We'll get to her bio here shortly. Wanted to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank everybody for having the dialogue, passing this on to people who might be interested, and reaching out with all the feedback we've had. A lot of great conversation lately. Obviously, a lot going on in the sporting world, the performance world, the world of humans, and a lot to be thankful here with the audience that we have, and certainly the guests that we have tonight and the guests that we've had on in the past and will continue to have in the future. This platform is taking shape and continues to be malleable, and is becoming a very powerful tool for myself, for our guests, and for everybody out there listening. So thank you once again. As always, brought to you by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Benchmark Athletics, and Epic, in association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. Session 96, Frances Flint. D. Frances Flint, she of a Doctor of Philosophy from the University of Oregon, Master of Science from the University of Oregon, a Bachelor of Physical and Health Education from the University of Toronto. She holds professional certifications in emergency medical responder and first responder as an instructor, acute musculoskeletal and limb support. She is a Canadian athletic therapist certified therapist through the CATA, a retired national athletic trainer through the NATA in the United States, an emergency medical technician. She is certified in basic trauma life support, certified all the way through into the advanced levels, advanced trauma and life support, and it goes on and on and on. She has held administrative positions as the founding coordinator of the therapy certificate program at York University in athletic therapy. Employment history includes Basketball Canada, Ministry of Tourism and Recreation, the Canadian Amateur Swimming Association. She has been honored with the Merit Award from the OATA, as Distinguished Fellow for the Association for Applied Sports Psychology, a Distinguished Educator Award through the CATA, Certified Athletic Therapist Writing Award. And I don't mean to minimize any of this, but it goes on and on and on. And what a career and experience. She has been across the world with presentations and invited lectures. Scholarly professional contributions include 1 white paper, 1 book, chapters in 8 different texts, 8 articles in refereed journals, and still teaching, still giving back to the profession on a regular basis at York University, the psychology of injury in sport, her baby, her passion, but also a very bright spot in my career. In the beginning of my career, I entered into the athletic therapy world officially through York University, and one of the first conversations I had, I believe, was about baseball and about athletic therapy. So Frances, thank you very much for taking your time to be here, for providing us with all that you've done in this profession, and just for being here and sharing this with myself and with our audience.
Oh, James, this is my pleasure to be here and have a chat with you and anyone else who comes along. about a topic that's dear to our hearts, obviously, and otherwise we wouldn't have stuck with it.
That's
So
it.
very happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you. Great to see you as always, and still going strong. So maybe we'll work through this evening through our conversation. We typically go, where did this start and where is it now? But let's start with where you are now and what you're doing, because I think just in the preamble before we got on here live, we started talking and chatting about the necessity of having therapists, of having people in the performance space, athletic therapists, physiotherapists, whoever it is, interacting with athletes, interacting with other human beings, understanding perhaps a little bit more about psychology and the psychology of injury in our space. Why has that been your focus, and what is that? How does that play out in the day-to-day for you now?
I think probably I became focused on psychology of sport injury further along in my career, but it started because as a young person, I wanted to play every single sport that was going, anything that was going. And that resulted in torn ACL left knee, torn reconstruction left knee, torn medial and lateral ligaments left knee, torn ACL right knee, reconstructed left ankle. Whatever else. And there weren't any ATs. And the more I saw athletes putting themselves out there and getting in with the culture of sport, which is you play, whether you're hurt or not. I mean, if you're hurt and you're playing, then you're giving it for the team. And that's the culture. And we need to educate young people that their lives are important now, but they're also important 20, 30, 40 years down the road. And so they need someone who is a voice of reason. And that mostly, to me, is the AT. So that's the focus. And that's why partly the psychology of injury, to help people understand that there's more to it than giving one for the Gipper.
Absolutely. And from the therapist side, sorry, I just had a little bit of feedback here, but from the therapist side, there's certainly that side of things as well. It goes beyond sort of taping ankles and holding water bottles and squirting water bottles and refilling water bottles. For the most part, therapists, sideline personnel, performance personnel are around the team more than they're around their family. And I think this is, at least in professional settings or collegiate settings or some of these other things, when we break down the number of hours we spend at our jobs, we're there more often than home. And obviously in today's day and age, there's a lot of things coming to the surface, human issues, things that certainly may or may not have to do directly with injury, but a lot of information filters through training rooms, through therapy rooms, through the gym floor and dugouts, these kinds of different places. These are critical skills. I would agree that therapists and people in these spaces should at least have a base knowledge of when it comes to sort of understanding beyond the physical, beyond the physiological response to a local injury. Because as you mentioned in our preamble, your knee hurts. Okay, let's only talk about your knee. And then my rehab becomes only about your knee, and it becomes quite streamlined and blinders on, and maybe we neglect the ankle or the hip or the left shoulder or whatever may be contributing to it. But we also neglect the other questions that truly matter, and that's the human that we're talking to. So I don't know if you want to take anything from that or go with that, but yeah, you brought up some really great points in the preamble with that.
Well, I agree with you 100%. And what is critical, I think, in this situation is we understand that that knee is attached to a body, and that body may be hurting inside for one reason or another. But, I talk to my sports psychology colleagues, and they say, oh, I only want to deal with the psychological stuff. I don't know anything about the sports medicine. And then I talk to the sports medicine people, and, oh, I only want to deal with the knee. I don't want to deal with that soft stuff. And to be honest with you, I think both sides are frightened of the other side. And we see athletic therapists who will approach an athlete and say, look them in the face and say, hi, how are you doing? And then look down at the knee and say, how's your knee doing?
Right.
Because they don't want to hear that answer of how they're doing. And that athlete is laying there thinking, well, I didn't sleep last night because it hurt too much. And my parents were yelling at me because I wanted to come out of the game. And my brother and sisters are looking up at me because I'm their role model and I don't know how to handle that. And they're thinking all these things. And the coach is touching me and I don't want the coach to touch me.
Mhm.
And they'll open up to us because they trust how we touch them. And they open up immediately.
Mhm.
Because they know that we're there to help them. And usually, you get somebody who starts to open up and wow, out it comes. And that frightens people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I was having a conversation earlier in the day and sort of through the weekend as well with metrics, right? How we measure certain things and how we can use science to solidify what we're doing, or how we do return to play, or how we give somebody clearance from a post-surgical from a case in the rehab to return to play. And I don't know. I think there's certainly a ratio here between utilizing science and metrics, but the art of what we do has to play a role. The anecdotal, the experiential, the human experience of empathy, compassion, sympathy, wisdom, knowledge, education, so on and so forth. Those pieces are immeasurable a lot of times when it comes to rehab. And I think you mentioned this already, but the TLC factor, going through a pandemic where only virtual appointments were available. I read studies, I read science that said virtual care is just as good as in person. And I said, on what level? And, I would read those take that with a grain of salt, because as soon as you make physical contact, a hand on a shoulder, a hand on a knee, in a safe place, in an environment where you are in the corner of the athlete, I think it becomes a wholly different relationship. Absolutely. And a lot of tears, come through training rooms and from therapists and and athletes alike. And it's a critical piece. And so the psychology of sport injury is sort of, I think, in my opinion anyway, and maybe biased, correct or incorrect, please jump on board, but it's sort of continually evolving and slowly becoming a greater part, I hope, or a greater consideration in what we do. Is that a fair statement at this point through your career?
Yeah, I think so. And I think in the past, and even a few people today, athletic therapists will say, I'm not a sports psychologist, so I don't deal with that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hate to disagree with you, but no, you're not a sports psychologist, but you do deal with that stuff.
Absolutely.
And the way you're dealing with it right now is putting up a hand to that athlete and saying, whoops, okay, I'm going to stick with your knee. Let's not talk about that other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to help people understand that interaction that's there. It's a reality. And athletic therapists can't run away from it.
Mm-hmm. Is there a safe way, or how would you advise sort of, either let's start with the newish therapist, the therapist who's coming through school, or has just finished school, or has just written their exams in their first job, that sort of newish realm. What would you advise in terms of how do I get comfortable with that level of discomfort in those areas?
Yeah. I think one thing that we're not doing that we could use from the physical world, the physical rehabilitation and assessment world, are simulations.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could have 3 in a group, an athlete acting out a role who's dying to say something about the coach touching me, a young athletic therapist, and somebody who's sitting back just listening. And let's act it out. And the funny thing is that your first time round on a simulation, it's I'm not sure what. Let me see. Well, let's talk about this. Tied up for words because you don't know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that missing out on one of the biggest things that we do, and that is listening. And we listen to the physical part, about how long pain has been and how bad it's been and so on, but we don't listen to the psychological part. And I think the small group simulations would really help. And that should happen, I feel, within school.
Mhm, mhm. And
That's
even
one of the biggest.
yeah, absolutely. And if not in school, then in Con Ed and through my career, and then certainly in the last 5, 6 years in personal experience and beyond, um, eh, there has been a thirst for courses, for webinars, for how do I
Yeah,
learn this stuff if I don't know how to do it? And I think you're exactly right. Like it's that piece of I don't know what I don't know until it's pointed out that I don't know it. And that's an amazing point that you touch on, and I agree wholeheartedly. We don't have to have all the right things to say, but we do have to have all the right ways to listen and to
yeah,
be actively engaged. And I think we had Joe Kenny on here, right, who you know very well, and that was one of
yes,
Joe's, one of the major takeaways from our talk on here was that listening is the greatest gift we can give somebody. And you can take away your taping skills, you can take away all those other things, and if you just listen, give the other human on the other side of the room, take away their title, even don't even call them an athlete, just that person, if you allow them
yeah,
to talk and be there to listen, what gets revealed will help you solve or resolve or refer wherever you need to go, but not if you have an agenda going in that this is a knee injury, they're a track athlete, therefore it must be chondromalacia patella. And then, so yeah, exactly. And these blinders, right, that get put on, and then we get sort of single track focus. So I think this is a skill set that obviously needs practice. And we talk about it when it comes to automated responses with some of the things that you're also very skilled and certified in when it comes to emergency care and trauma
mm,
and supporting limbs and these other things that when we leave those alone and we never use them, it's a skill that doesn't get harnessed. And then it's a skill that gets jumbled. And instead of at a loss for words, it's now a bit of panic internally as to how do I respond to this emergency situation, because we haven't gone down that road. We haven't had these mock-ups of somebody who needs to be put on a
right.
spine board because nobody's coming, or there's a bleed, or how do I turn that oxygen tank on when there's thousands of people around and they're watching me and I can't remember my right from my left. So getting to these spaces and leaning into these spaces, this is all part of the psychology of humanity, but certainly of injury. And I think, I don't know, maybe we take it a step further, and perhaps you've already developed or some good courses where we're talking about the psychology of the practitioner here now, maybe more so than the psychology of the injury, because at the end of the day, you look back through the 10 or 12 or 15 or 30 athletes or people that you've seen, you've taken on components of each one of those injuries, each one of those
Yep.
conversations. And I don't know, is that an experience that you would speak to in terms of either your own practice, or is this wholly different than psychology of injury in the way that you're teaching, or are these touch points that you see regularly? I know there's a couple things that we can certainly go into beyond that, but your take on that.
Yeah, I think right now I'm so keen and eager to start teaching a course that I became an instructor of about 6 or 8 months ago. And it's
Mhm.
called Psychological Body Armor. And, it's for the first responders. So you deal with a really gross injury or a bad situation in an injury that's occurred. And do we take that home? And who do we speak with at home? And you may not want to take it home because you don't want to bring your workplace home, but where else does it go?
Mhm.
And I think this course will help athletic therapists become more comfortable, number one, with dealing with psychological injuries, but number two, become more comfortable dealing with their own psychological well-being. And that's part of the AT 911 that we started a couple of years ago. And it sort of, while I was out of action a bit, it was out of action a bit. And fortunately, or not fortunately, because of COVID, we didn't have a lot of big sport. We didn't have a lot of big injury. But now that sport is back in, we've already had some tragic situations.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so, there's more than just the athlete. There's also the athletic therapist.
Mhm.
And that all has to go hand in hand. We can't help somebody with their problems if we're not comfortable with ours.
That's, yeah, 100%. If I'm not operational, how can I be responsible for coping and helping somebody manage in their space? I'm making a bunch of notes here as we talk, and if you want to go a little further with the psychological body armor, is that a course that's readily available for practitioners? Is that through the university? Where is that? How is that? I'd love to. I don't mean to plug it. That was unintentional, but I do think just through talking about this, and you talk about some of those tragic events, and we were part of it with my current role at the University of Toronto when Ottawa played at
Yes.
Toronto, and we're aware in our circles as to what took place. And over these past couple of weeks, there's been some further developments with that in terms of scheduling. In terms of now the regular season has wound up. University of Toronto ends up hosting a playoff game, and this coming Saturday, Ottawa will return to the University of Toronto, and that's less than 2 months. That's less than 2 months from the time that one of their teammates so tragically passed away following the game, and they'll have to come back to that site. And I think
Yes.
about that from my experiences, as a practitioner, as a first responder, as somebody who's been through, traumatic type experiences in those spaces. I wasn't there for that, but I think about this through our student therapists who responded to that, our head therapist at the University of Toronto with football responding to that, and what that may bring up in returning to that game. And I mean, I'm talking just checking in with our athletes that we see on a regular basis with this state coming up and saying, are you okay? How are things with that? Have you thought about this? Where is your mind at? And these kinds of things, because there are quite literally guys on our football roster that have abrasions on their elbows that haven't healed in 2 months, let alone something as deep rooted as what everybody who was involved or had anything to do with that game or any of these incidents in their past may be going through. I just think it's so critical. So to bring that back full circle and bring that to light for everybody, if you haven't experienced, if you know the people who have experienced it, I think just reaching out and checking in with everybody that is part of that process. But psychological body armor, that this course, if you can speak to that a little bit, that would be wonderful for the audience, just to know that something like this exists.
Well, I'm trying to pick up some dates right now, but dates this fall are all of a sudden are filling up very quickly with various events. So that's what I'm trying to do right now, is find some dates. And also another date for the individual critical incident stress management, so that we can put a few more people onto our AT 911 team, peer support team, so that we can be there for these situations. But certainly for the University of Ottawa and for the hosts, University of Toronto, this is going to be really, really tough. I am sure, and I do know, that the universities have set out programs to help staff and students get through these kinds of situations, but it's unique in sport. It's not the general kind of thing that we see in medicine where somebody has a heart attack and dies. This is in sport, where we expect there to be healthy athletes. And wow, when it comes out of the blue and hits you from behind, it really sends you for a loop. And now you have to resurface and pay respects to that again. So I will be publishing some dates, and the first couple will be virtual until we find out what's happening with our lives. And we can do that in one day. So that's my plan at this juncture right now.
Beautiful. If and when those dates come to fruition, keep me posted, keep us posted, and we'll ensure that we get those dates out. And I'm sure many listeners would be more than willing to jump on board and find a spot in that. You talked to AT 911 and a peer support team. Do you mind just talking on that a little bit further? Because I would also like to make this known for people who don't know about it.
Right.
Hopefully not too many need to use it, but if and when they do, there is at least an initial support system in place.
Well, this started, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, when we had an athletic therapist who went out west with a hockey team, and it was a rep team, so I didn't know the players that well. And one of the players was checked into the boards, and we know when we see that check into the boards, the way the person goes down, we know what's happened. And he went out expecting it to be a spinal injury, and it was a spinal injury. And he managed it properly. He packaged him up appropriately. He was taken to hospital, a long ride to hospital. His parents were in Ottawa, so he didn't have any support people except the head athletic therapist. And this head athletic therapist is sitting back saying, "Jesus, this is my fault. Did I do everything right?" And 18911 is not to debrief on what you did. We're not the people who will be concerned with that. What we're concerned with is, how are you doing right now? And we want them to be honest with the response. Mm-hmm. We don't want them to say, I'm okay, I'm fine, because we know darn well that they're not. But when he came back to Ontario, he got in touch with me and he said, "Who do I talk with about this?" And you know what? We didn't have anybody. We looked around and we said, who have we got for our athletic therapists when they go through a traumatic situation, whom they can talk with, even if it's on the phone at that time. We didn't have much virtual at that time, but even if it's on the phone, unless we can get to them in person. And so that was the start of 18911. And what happens now is, if you have a traumatic situation that you've dealt with, or one of your staff has dealt with, and you feel you want some help, even just to talk, we have a phone number that you call, and that phone number comes straight through to me. And I see where you are in the province, our big province, and I try to get somebody as close as I can to you, but somebody who might be similar to you, working at a college or a clinical person or something like that. And probably within a couple of hours at the most, that person would receive a phone call saying, I'm so-and-so, I'm part of the peer support team. What can I do to help you out? And I'm listening. And everything that you discuss with me stays with me unless I feel that your life is in danger. And we've been getting through to a few people. It's slow, but the good thing is we haven't had to do a lot.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the good part.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's brilliant that this is in place. And I hope that, anybody who has been through an experience of their own or is willing to help out will perhaps reach out to Dr. Frances Flint here and connect on this 18911 piece and the psychology of sport. Listen, I reached out through some of our channels last year in the hockey playoffs. Not a tragic event, but a very scary event when the captain of the Maple Leafs got hit in the first round of the playoffs, and the on-ice management was a thing. And I've been lucky enough through various channels to work with some professional hockey players, one of which is on that roster. And I just reached out and said, "Hey, do you have your therapist's number? Can you just send me his number real quick? I just want to check in and make sure he's okay." And I think managing these things and being on ice, and in that one, it was strange to be a viewer, but also be a therapist and see that the cameras, they didn't go to commercials. They didn't pan away. They didn't do anything other than continuously show what was happening in a fairly significant, but not tragic event. And, just to reach out and say, you're going to feel the way that I have felt in these scenarios in the past is I must have done something wrong, because this happened or that happened, and just to reach out and to check in. And I think it's a very it's such a rewarding profession. It's such a rewarding job, to the point that we end up being overly critical when it comes to managing,
Yeah.
significant or urgent scenarios where all of our skill set is there. All of the things that we've practiced, all of the things that we've studied are done well, done to do no harm
Yep.
in the act of managing injury. And I just think that knowing that there are professionals who have great experience, massive amounts of knowledge like yourself in these areas, and that you continually press forward with making this something that's available to therapists, and hopefully it grows and continues to grow with other people to sort of fill in and have greater reach, because this is ultimately, I think, what it's about as practitioners and even as athletes or as coaches or as human beings, is sharing our experiences, not to trump somebody, not to get tunnel vision and tell you this is how it's going to be, but to connect, to listen, to provide that space for another professional to grieve or to manage or to, and even to flip this on its head, just to get more experience. If we shift away from the
Yeah.
911 and the urgency, and I'm working in baseball, but I've never worked in baseball before. The other side of it is that it's a very small world within the athletic therapy space, and what a community, what a supportive community. When you need something or want to reach out to somebody, it feels, and very much through this network and this platform, reach out. Hey, Frances, would you want to come on the podcast and chat about your experiences? Sure, why not? Like, this is a great opportunity to get some insight. And so again, for all of our listeners, all of our guests, and for everybody who's paying attention to this, it goes such a long way, because your story and your experience holds value, and it holds value not just to you, but to everybody listening in some way or another. So let's shift gears a little bit away from the 911, the emergency, the psychology stuff, and your career. It's been an amazing one. A master's and a PhD, both with the Ducks at the University of Oregon out in the West Coast of the United States. Why there? Why there? And then how did the transition happen back here?
Well, it's interesting because growing up, I'd never heard of Oregon except what we had to learn in school. Where is it? Oh, it's there. Okay, fine. I was working in camps, Bark Lake and a couple of other camps, and I wanted sports medicine when I finished as an undergraduate. But I also wanted outdoor stuff. And I said to people I was working with, I'm finished as of this date, and I don't know where I'm going, but I want more learning. And the person we hired to take my job, she had just come from the University of Oregon, serendipity. And the more I talked with her about it, the more I thought, oh, I got to go to Oregon. And flying out there, it's funny because the woman beside me on the flight, we were chatting, and she said, where are you going? And I said, well, I'm going to the University of Oregon. And she said to me, well, it's actually Oregon. It's not Oregon. And I said, oh, okay. And she said, don't worry, you'll have your duck feet in no time. And I thought, heck is she talking about? And then I learned that it was the Oregon Ducks. And I say quite proudly now that I'm a duck. So I studied out there and then came back, and I had switched gears again because, it's not written anywhere that you can only have one career. You can have as many as you want. But I switched gears and I came back and started coaching at York University, coaching women's basketball. And that was the passion at the time. We won the Ontario Championships. We did really well. But what I noticed was there weren't many ATs around. And after 8 or 9 years, I said, I want to go back to school. I want more learning. And so I went back to University of Oregon because they allowed me to do sports psychology and sports medicine together. Mm-hmm. And so after 4 or 5 years, that's what I wanted to work in. I wanted to get more ATs in every sport, in every venue, but I also wanted to help them with the tough part, the athletic injuries and how we deal with them. And then I noticed that there were so many kin students at York who wanted sports medicine as well, and hence the athletic therapy program. And that is something now that my face just lights up when I talk about that, because to see our graduates like yourself, you're promoting communication in athletic therapy. You're helping to develop enhanced learning in athletic therapy. And I look at the other ones of our graduates, and we've got, I don't know, 10 or more than 10 PhDs, and a whole bunch of master's students, and a couple of MDs, and a couple of orthopods, and people who are working at York University, our head athletic therapists, you know, and a couple of the athletic therapists who are working there as well. But I look around and I say, gee, people are getting the jobs that they wanted. They are working where they want to work, and they're successful. And that to me that's everything.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you know, starting that program at York University and then seeing it evolve and it continuing to grow and shape sort of the profession as well, and in alignment with you know, where the governing bodies are going, and competencies and shifting gears, and having a pulse of what was needed. What an amazing insight to go way west, to come all the way back to coach basketball, to see something. And I think, you know, that's obvious maturity at work, at the same time as, you know, capitalizing on a niche and really looking at things from a little bit of a bird's eye view, identifying gaps and filling them. I mean, quite literally, you built something that fills so many gaps in terms of what's available. Continuing education, a brand new program, obviously, at the time when you started, still fairly new in terms of a profession, and evolving and growing. And you know, there's so many therapists out there doing different things now: teams, horses, equine therapy, right? Dogs, canine therapy, working in you know, corporate settings, working in all these different spaces. And it's beautiful to see the evolution that, you know, when I was going through school, I look around the room or have the conversation, and then I worked at York, and then I did a little bit of work with Sheridan, and to have these conversations and look and see, like, what are students thinking when they're in school? And generally speaking, they're in school and they think that there are 3 jobs. One is to work in pro sport, right? One is to own their own clinic. And then the third one is to take Frances's job. And that's it. And those are the 3 options, right, in school. And I think what's been so nice over this last little while, pandemic included, is people got a little bit more creative and maybe started to identify, and not just the pandemic, but I think just through the creativity and the space, and just acknowledging how broad yet focused the skill set is within athletic therapy, that it is playable everywhere, because this language that we all speak, called human movement, is universal. It crosses barriers, it crosses borders, it crosses its connection with other human beings. And I think, you know, through my own tunnel vision, at least to start my career, there were those 3 jobs, and I think I've now officially done all 3 of those jobs. I haven't opened my own space, but I see the opportunity almost everywhere we go now, in terms of how we can educate, how we can talk to students, how we can talk to future therapists, how we can learn continually from other therapists who have plenty of experience. How about yourself along the way? Were there mentors? Were there significant people along the way that pushed you or encouraged you, or was this pretty innate in terms of where you wanted to go and where you wanted to take it?
That's an interesting question. Certainly when I was in high school and playing basketball, I looked at the coaches and I said, geez, you know, I want to do that. That's pretty neat. And they were very good mentors. But the knee injury started in high school, and there certainly weren't any ATs, that's for sure. But when I went out to Oregon, you know, that's the big time. Geez, you got, you know, 80, 100,000 people in the stands, and, you know, the teams, you know, we filled up the Gatorade bins for the visiting team, which happened to be Oregon State, and that's like Oregon
Yeah,
and Oregon
state
State.
rivalry. You got it.
Oh boy, oh yeah. And we filled it up for them and brought it over to the sideline on their side, and they said, thanks very much. And as we walked away and got about 100 yards away, we noticed that they poured it out. And then they went and filled it. Because this is a big game.
Mhm.
So what did we put in the water? They didn't know. So they poured it out and refilled it and brought it to their sideline. This is big time sport. And to see the things that were happening for athletes, I thought too far. And then I looked back at what we had here and I thought too little.
Mhm.
There has to be something that's good that's in the middle.
Mhm.
And, there's some, Dr. Lou Osternig was a great mentor out at Oregon. And, a few others of the people who were leading the way in studying sports medicine and helping us grasp different things that we hadn't even thought about before.
Mhm.
And being able to go into a lab and take apart a brain in our hands, at 7:30 on Friday mornings, and then go to breakfast.
That's it.
We learned, we learned about those things and we grew. And then coming back here, York has and did have when I came here 40 some odd years ago, really good faculty and experts in their fields, just wonderful people. And a couple of them came to me and said, we're going to be watching you because we don't want you to not finish your PhD. When you do a PhD, you get to a point where you've done everything except your dissertation.
Right.
And 75 to 80% of people do not finish their dissertation. So you start and put in 3 years or more, and you do not finish your PhD.
Mhm.
And they said to me, we're going to be watching to make sure you don't get so engrossed in what you're doing here, you're not finishing your PhD. And so they were really helpful. Sue Wilson and a few other people who kept nudging.
Yeah, no, beautiful. And I
Yeah.
think those are the pieces of the story as well that, as we go, we learn that it's not all on our own. And again, sort of circle back to where we started is there is support, and certainly within this community, there's plenty of support and pushing things along and supporting the current students, but also having connection to current students.
Yes.
And I think that's where I see this moving. That's where I see, Sheridan students tend to pick this up quite regularly, these podcast sessions, and maybe they haven't had exposure to you being part of the York program or haven't
Right.
heard you speak before or didn't know about AT911. And that's really what it's all about, is just creating more and more exposure as to what this profession is, what people are doing within this profession, how much of I guess the center of the spoke is the way that I see it, is we can get in a room, we can get in the ring with chiropractors, with orthopedic surgeons, with MDs, with massage therapists, and hopefully not have the ego piece of trying to be better, but actually just trying to be a part of a solution or an integrative model or a team that is working towards, best care, best practice, and ultimately, living that way through our work and expressing that. So I think all of these are amazing talking points, and it's so much more we could go on about it. I'd love to potentially, try to organize something with you with AT911 and the sports psychology side of things with a few other contacts in the future to perhaps do something here, a little bit of a panel through talking through some of these things, and maybe even play a little bit of what do we talk? A little bit of role play in terms of some scenarios live, and just watch that play out, because these are the realities. If we don't practice these things, if we don't get into these corners or get away from our comfort zones, then we stay exactly where we were, and growth is, probably still happening, but not to the extent that it could if we lead into some of this, some of these things we're not quite clear on.
And, I looked at the athletic therapy community and people like Wendy Hampson and, as you said, Joe Kenny and, a few of the should I say old guard? They'll probably shoot me for that. But a few of that group of people who were wonderful. But now what I've realized, and trying to stay open with my thinking, is I look at some of my graduates who are now colleagues, and boy, they mentor me. I look at what they're doing and I'm saying, wow, that's fabulous. We need more of that. And that's pretty special.
I love that. I think that having mentors both ways. And I think maybe we're onto something. Maybe we start a mentorship program for, if you've been in this longer than 10 or 15 years, you should probably get a mentor that's in their 20s, in their early 20s, that's relevant and competent and has passed, the exam or is about to pass the exam, because there's so much that goes both ways, and we continually learn. And the further we get away from being relevant, the further we get away from being relevant. And so I think connecting this on both ways, and to have Joe have been on here, and Glenn Bergeron and yourself, and really sharing a lot of experience and notes, and pages of notes into this one already, and lots of talking points that we'll come back to in the future as well. But I won't keep you too long. I know this is it's a Monday night, it's late, but it's always a pleasure to chat and to discuss our profession now, and I'm sure there is a strange transition as I'm starting to experience students that I've worked with in the past are now colleagues, and there's a strange sort of I don't know, I guess as the hair falls off my head, more and more students come right up beside you and start to share the workspace. And it's actually kind of thrilling and kind of amazing to see how far they've come, and then to sort of reflect on perhaps how far we've come as practitioners and as a as a profession. It is an athletic therapy specific sort of platform here, but at the same time, again, it's these lessons and these learning modules and your experience and sharing what you're doing for our community is going to reach massage therapists. It's going to reach physiotherapists and chiropractors, and oh, that's a really great idea. Do we have anything like that? And then have people reaching into their own sort of credentialed colleges and things like that to either establish or to start to have these conversations, because these ones truly matter. And I just want to thank you for your time, not only for this evening, but for everything you've done for this profession, for myself personally through the program and the years that we spent together. It's truly an honor, and this is a transitionary period for me as well, as I start to bring people on here and talk to them as colleagues as well, as opposed to the professor from the past or the mentor from the past. And really humbling. I'm truly grateful for your time. And again, thank you so much for this evening. Thank you so much for all you've done. I guess if it walks like a duck, if she talks like a duck, she must be a duck. Frances Flint, our guest this evening, Dr. Frances Flint, session 96, Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. Frances, I'll leave this one with you to say goodnight. An amazing piece as always from you, and I look forward to staying connected and to connecting our colleagues and beyond through this conversation and more. So thank you once again, and I'll leave this one to you to say goodnight and close it out.
To everyone out there who's an athletic therapist or budding athletic therapist, stay safe, help each other, be open to learning, and just make sure that you'll be kind to all of our people who are striving to do the best they can, but be safe. James, thank you so much for all that you are doing to help with our athletic therapy across the country.
I appreciate it. Thank you. This is great. And as always, I'll just throw the sponsors in here. First Star Therapy, Benchmark Athletics, Epic Mobility Tape, in association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. It's session 96 with Dr. Frances Flint. Thank you all for being here, and good night. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community. Check us out online, firststartherapy.com. That's FIRSTAR therapy.com. Or email us with feedback, consult@firststartherapy.com.
FirstStarTherapy at firststartherapy.com, on Instagram at firststar.therapy, and our podcast host at letschat.at. This is First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast.